In today's interconnected world, an infinite number of factors contribute to the state of people, places, countries, and the entire Earth. As a result, it can be easy to falsely attribute blame for unfavorable outcomes. This dilemma is ever present in the perception of the authority and government, and its responsibility to economically protect its citizens. However, an interconnected world also offers a great number of perspectives on the issue. In this special knowledge program, we are going to ask ourselves, to what extent do authorities affect the economic status of society? To investigate this question, we are going to focus on a real-life example, specifically Brazil. Approximately 1 in 5 Brazilians are living in poverty, yet the Brazilian government is spending the equivalent of nearly $11 billion on preparations for the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Olympics. Many Brazilians have taken to the streets to protect what they view as a misallocation of government. Today, we are going to be hearing from many experts all over the world, examining different perspectives on the issue and piecing together the evidence to get the truth of the Brazilian economic crisis.
Now, we can see in late 1800s America that individuals such as John D. Rockefeller were able to elevate themselves to great wealth through capitalism that was utterly void of any authoritative intervention. We can see through people like this that it is possible to have a societal wealth without any kind of authority affecting said society. However, his company, Standard Oil, eventually became an authoritative-like entity, and any employee of Standard Oil, or anyone purchasing oil for that matter, would have their economic status affected by a type of authority. What's more is that authority eventually destroyed Standard Oil because it was a monopoly, and in doing so, affected the economic status of all people involved with it. So while it is entirely possible to create economic status in a society without interference from authority, it is extremely likely, if not paramount, that the wealth will create an authoritative-like entity all its own.
Just as Brazil's economy is affected by the authoritative figures of its modern society, Myanmar is suffering similar consequences. In fact, the entire capital city of Myanmar mimics the construction of Brazil's World Cup Stadium. Naypyidaw is the capital of Myanmar and is otherwise known as Burma. The English definition of Naypyidaw is royal city, which the modern capital fulfills in looks. Even with Myanmar's population of over 51 million people, the capital city is completely void of people. Naypyidaw remains a symbol of wealth with its 20-lane highways and hotels fit for kings. But a large part of the rest of Myanmar lives in poverty. The authoritative figures controlling Myanmar's economy chose to spend their money on continuing the construction of Naypyidaw rather than attempting to aid the 26% of people who are living in poverty in Myanmar. Only 0.04% of the GDP of Myanmar is spent on the well-being and health care of the citizens. Even though the government spending on Naypyidaw affected the individuals of society, the majority of the citizens are not in poverty, and the GDP, although not particularly high, is reasonable at $52 billion. Because of this, the economic status of the citizens and the people of society may be affected by the government spending, but their overall status is not controlled by the government.
If we look back at the epic ancient societies like ancient Rome and ancient Egypt, we see a trend of incredible power being vested into authoritarian rulers, along with ludicrous wealth being distributed to them. From the Roman emperors who controlled 20% of the wealth of all of Rome, to the Egyptian pharaohs that were showered with precious metals and claimed personal ownership of all the lands of Egypt. The control that ancient societies allowed them to possess made them completely subject to the whims of their leaders. The control that the leaders of ancient world exerted over the economic status of their people is similar to the control that Brazil is exerting over its population. Brazil's government is slacked hard by a wave of poverty, but it is not focusing its efforts to aid its people who suffer at the hands of an unchecked government.
During the Soviet Union, the Marxist government had control of everything. The media, the military, the people's opinion, and most importantly, the economy. They controlled the land and industry, which affected the economic status of all of Russia. The society ended up extremely poor. People had to wait in long lines to receive food, water, anything else. Commonly, alcohol was used as a hard currency that could get you anything, since the ruble was such an unstable currency. Because of the government controlling all of the economy and economic assets, The people of Russia were unable to increase their economic status because of the controlling authority. I remember when the Reds took over, and all of my family's property was seized by the government. We were forced to move to a tiny 3-room house for my whole family, my 4 brothers, 2 sisters, parents and grandparents. It was terrible. Everywhere we looked there was famine and poverty. The government was keeping all of the land, money and industry for themselves. We had to wait hours for food, and sometimes we didn't even get any. It was horrible. All of us average citizens were so poor because of the communism. The governmental control of everything effectively destroyed our lives and made us horribly poor. China has an extremely wealthy government, but doesn't invest in socialist policies, and as a result, the citizens are impoverished. There are some big implications to this. Given that the government stays in power, the government will continue to grow wealthier, then the citizens will become poorer. As money is hoarded by the government, the economy as a whole will become weaker. If that happens, then the GDP of China will decrease in value, and China may cease to be a world power. As a result of this, there may be a revolution in China, and anything could change. This is obviously a huge what if, but it's a scary look into what could be due to government control of wealth.
As we can conclude from today's programming, the more socialist a society is, the more control the authority and government has of the wealth. Because of this, a class of impoverished citizens is formed, which in turn affects the economic status of the society. Therefore, authorities have an extremely strong influence on the economic status of its society. And even if a society has a wealthy economic status without any influence from authority, it will create an authority from its wealth. We would like to thank you today for joining us.